ferry. He slept at the bottom of the ferry in a hammock, and as he was coming out of it, as they were crossing the other side, he was having a nervous breakdown, and that's why they rushed him to the emergency ward at the Victoria General Hospital as soon as they got off the ferry. And that can be verified by listening to Cheryl, Eleanor's daughter, tell that to Shimei on the phone as we're trying to find Uncle John. Okay? That enduring power of attorney, like I said, that woman tried to write a 2-sentence note with her one signature on it, which is not power of attorney, people. She appointed herself. Okay? And if John signed anything, well, if he's so sick to the point where he's almost dying and they're rushing him to the emergency ward where he's sleeping, you ask yourself, when did he find the time to be cognitive to sign over all his assets over to his freaking sister, who all of a sudden, after 50 years, decided to rescue her brother now that Joan was dead, and she had a big stack of cash sitting in her back pocket, but she just needed the bank to cash it. Appointing Mrs. Gilding as Mr. Duncan's power of attorney, the Gilding power of attorney, which revoked all other powers of attorney. Well, no, because on February 19th, I have it on recording with John himself saying, go get a lawyer. I went to go get a lawyer. I came back on the 21st to tell him that I've spoken to Paul now, right? But when I get to John's room, there's all these people around his bed. I see clearly the hammock, but they're telling me to bug off because I'm like, where's John? Because I expected to see him in a wheelchair, right? That's the last time I seen him was in a wheelchair, right? And they're saying, oh, get out of here, you're being rude and disrespectful. And because I had Andre, I didn't run up to the bed to see who was in the freaking hammock. I just went to the nurse's station asking for a doctor, right? Saying, where's John? Some doctor's saying, oh, I don't know, he's been released. I said, well, who the heck released John? I don't know. And then I didn't stay for the fight, people, okay, because they were going to bring in that British, well, John, you're confused if you had two worlds, and which one would you like to be in the best world that you can be, John? The British Punjabi, go figure. Maybe she wasn't Punjabi. She looked like she was Punjabi, only she had a British accent. Oh, they were sicking her on me, and I've got Andre. And the doctor's clearly saying that John's been released. To hell with that. I laughed, people. And I went and I called Paul. And then Paul tried to figure it out for me. Okay? That's when he came back and said, oh, those people are accusing you of stealing his wallet now. I said, you gotta be freaking kidding me. I can show you his wallet right now if I want to. Which revoked all prior powers of attorney, including the Chorney power of attorney. No, because nothing went to court, people. Nothing was done legitimately. Okay? I have proof that John said go get a lawyer, that he did not want to go to Victoria. He did not want to live with his sister for any length of time. At best, he'd like to visit his mom. But he already had plans to go visit his mom. Okay, in July for her birthday, the kids were going to take him. That's why he told me to get Paul, to prevent them from taking him, people. Because he couldn't understand why he had two families fighting over him all of a sudden. All of a sudden, after all these years, two families fighting for John. Why? Do you hear them fighting for John? No. Who's fighting for John? I'm fighting for John. That's who's fighting for John. I've always been fighting for John. all prior power of attorney, including the Chorney power of attorney. Well, there was only two, and they were both in my name. CIBC was advised that the gilding POA had been witnessed at the hospital with the crooked fucking social workers, okay? And the cleaning staff, right? That, took a bribe, right, people? Where Mr. Duncan was being cared for. But that's how they found him when they took him to the emergency room, right? Are you listening to this? Right? He was so sick that he was gonna die that they had to rush him to the emergency room, to the Victoria General Hospital after they got off the fucking ferry. Because he was so sick. Because that's how they found him. Oh, okay, but they just signed over the because they were caring for him, the social worker, right? Or somebody witnessed at the hospital, right? On the 20th, the day before they took him. Okay, are you listening to this? This is why I didn't go to the court date, people. Because this is what they do. Fraser Health Authority, same funky shit. Being cared for at the time. Was advised that the gilding POA had been witnessed at the hospital where Mr. Duncan was being cared for at the time. So they witnessed it. Somebody, that social worker, Sharon, Sharon, that British Punjabi, right? She witnessed it on February 20th, a day after John told me to go get Paul, okay? The lawyer, to prevent them from him being shipped off to where he didn't want to be, right? Even though he knew all of a sudden, out of the blue, after 25, 30 years, he had two families fighting for him. Right? His long-lost fucking family that came out of freaking nowhere all of a sudden wanted John. Okay. Right. And the bank accepted that as is because it was some care worker, some social worker, some fucking healthcare worker that witnessed the power of attorney. Without investigating, okay? Because as soon as this shit hit the fan, I told the bank, you need to investigate. Oh, no, you're accusing you. Well, okay, fine. If you're going to accuse me, that's fine. But least you can do is investigate what the fuck is going on because this is some shady shit. They ignored it, people. They ignored it, people. That's why I filed the lawsuit, people. But I still gave the bank the benefit of the doubt because it was me who took John there. Because John asked me to. Do something to help him with his problems with Joan and Debbie. With Joan bankrupting him. I said, well, the first thing you need to do is maybe open up your own damn bank account. Think about moving out. I'll help you get a place for yourself if that's what you want. I just know that I can't keep listening to you about crying on about jumping off a fucking bridge or a bloody balcony because you're depressed about what Joan and Debbie are doing to you all the time. And then after 3 years of living in Victoria, listening to that garbage, we ended up getting a house. Tried that. But even that house had a basement suite where Joan could have had, for all I cared, Joan could have moved in the basement. But I had to gut it first. I had to clean it first. But even then, the first week, John was running around attacking me when I got back from the bar with that guy. I don't know what the hell happened to John. But then even then, Joan sent him back to me the next day. At this time, there was no concern regarding Mr. Duncan's competency. That's not true, people. That's not true. Because, maybe not on the 20th. I don't know. Like I got recordings with him telling me to go get Paul on the 19th. I didn't come back until the 21st. Or something like that. 21st, 23rd, but maybe it even was the 23rd because the kids were going back and forth because they were accusing me of abusing John by stealing his money. Right? So I think maybe it was the 23rd when I went back. But they did this one day after John told me because they were spying, which under their mandates, those mandates I was showing you just with the last video, they're not allowed to spy on you, but they were. Okay? And he was only competent when they got what they wanted. When he wasn't giving them what he wanted, he was incompetent. That's why they were flipping it all the time. Back and forth, back and forth. Some days he was competent, other days he wasn't, right? Blah, 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 blah. Because they were dealing with two different powers of attorney. And you have to remember that witch, she put a change of address in on, I think it was February 4th. Okay? Right? She put it, when they transferred him from the Surrey Memorial Hospital, on the advice of the doctor gaslighting me, right? That's another story, right? To put him in that temporary care ward. As soon as he went into that temporary care ward, that's when his sister illegally put in a change of address without John knowing about it and without me knowing about it. And waited for his mail to come in so she could snag into what bank he was hooked up with. And as soon as she got his credit card statement, she got busy. She got fucking busy. But I have the proof to show how she did that. And I told that to the bank, and they didn't care. Well, at that time, I didn't quite clue in, but I told them that we were having problems and that, he's been medically kidnapped. They didn't care. They didn't want to investigate. They were too busy accusing me. Kind of like my landlords accusing me of taking advantage of my elderly landlords, their son, that is, accusing me of taking advantage of their elderly landlords, even though I gave up 11 years of my life just so that they can even put down greenhouses and sheds and all this crap when they advertised to sell this house. I'm the one that made the garden beds, okay? I'm the one that's been sifting rocks and sand and mud and dirt and morning glory and 50 bags full and cleaning up raccoon shit and all this, fixing the fucking porch, okay? I'm the one that's been doing that for 11 years, so much so that I can't even freaking see anymore. And now I'm facing homelessness, wave 2. You got rid of all the people in the basement suites, right? Right? You got rid of all the people that used to rent little bungalows that, $750, $800 for a little bungalow. Now it's like $2,000, $3,000 for the same freaking bungalow, okay? That you stack and pack whatever immigrant that you import into this country so that you can continue to harvest families like mine. I figured it out, okay, people? I figured it out. Accusing me of taking advantage of my elderly landlords. Yeah, okay. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know. Who has Shimei's body parts? I'd like to know. Somebody within that family in terms of the Punjabi community, okay? There's a Punjabi running around with Shimei inside of them, okay? Bottom line. And Sierra too. Because they're the only ones who can afford it. As they accuse people of taking advantage of them. Okay. Which revoked all prior powers of attorney, including the attorney power of attorney. CIBC was advised that the gilding POA had been witnessed at the hospital. I'd like to know who witnessed it. Obviously, hospital staff, in order for them to write that as if they got some big news flash with the big hammer. It's a cut deal. It was Sharon, the social worker, the one from Britain that came in on a visa that likes to screech with an accent, right? And told you that John was never going home by any means necessary. Well, why can't he come home by any means necessary? What is it that you're hiding, bitch? Well, we know now what you were hiding, bitch. Will the bitch ever get fired? No. No, because the government with Fraser Health Authority and obviously CIBC Bank and their lawyers are too busy covering it up. And that's why John will never have peace. had been witnessed at the hospital where Mr. Duncan was being cared for at the time. At this time, there are no concerns regarding Mr. Duncan's competency. That's a lie. It's a complete lie. In response to the foregoing, CIBC froze Mr. Duncan's accounts and undertook an internal investigation. Yeah, because they were accusing me of stealing John's money, even though it was Eleanor coming in with the inheritance that she didn't tell John about for 14 months, and only after he was drugged up and kept drugged as they were plotting and scheming to drug him up even more, put him in the bowels of a ferry, and then rush him to the emergency ward on the other side of the freaking water and say that's how they found him. And then they kept him like that for 3 months so they can finish the fucking job. All right? That's what happened. As they were telling him that he wasn't allowed to see the kids because he wasn't better yet. Have that on recording, Eleanor, with your voice. Why wasn't he allowed to see the kids? Because he wasn't better. There was no such thing as COVID in those days. Oh, I know. You were just setting up the precedents for all the other Uncle Johns coming in through the system, right? We know how that one unfolded now, don't we? There was a reason why people weren't allowed to see their loved ones as they were dying off like flies. That had nothing to do with what they said it was about, okay? On or about March 26th of 2015, Mr. Duncan attended at a CIBC branch in Mill Bay because they took him to go see his mom one time. And I guess they decided to take him to the bank. But mind you, I think Mill Bay is up by where Eleanor lives, so I don't know. BC and executed a further CIBC form titled General Power of Attorney, because they had to remove me through their tweaking of files. This is how they tweak their files, people. I mean, what's John going to do? He's being told every time he asks to see the kids or asks to see me, that he's not allowed to see us. And don't forget, that hag would go right up to John because, you see, that's the benefit of not having Shimei here, because there is no witness to verify this outside of what Shimei told me, right? But that hag go right up to John's face. You're not allowed to see the kids. You know that, John. And it's spitting all over his freaking face, people. Because you have to remember, John can't see, right? You're not allowed to see the kids. You already know that, John. Don't ask. No. Because you're not better yet. So by come March, you think he's arguing with them? Yeah, okay. They had him freaking whipped, hog-tied, and ready for the stake. Okay? He couldn't escape. He was trapped, and he was being abused, and he knew it. So he had to comply. He had no choice. And then, after he complied, they dope him back up again and make him sleep. They only gave him tidbits of temporary freedom, just enough to sign things, assuming they weren't forging his signature when they couldn't get it out of him. Because I wouldn't put it past them. Executed a further CIBC form titled General Power of Attorney, appointed Miss Gilding as his power of attorney with respect to his accounts. All he had, people, was his main account. That's it. The credit card, which I had my own card accessed, right? And then Andre's account, which is still on lockdown and requires John's signature to release those funds, and John's been dead since 2018. The registered savings plan didn't come in until later. After the lawyers were done transferring funds. And that's why the dollar amount was hidden in terms of the balance. That's why they were trying so hard to remove me with my card. And they used one teller 3 times to do it. And that one good bank manager, he knew that what was going on was wrong. And this lawyer for this case asked me how I got my enduring power of attorney. And I said, well, because I trusted the lawyer. Stupid me. I said, well, because I came across one good bank manager. That was it. It took only one. That's all there was. Out of everybody I came into contact, only one was a good person. I bet you that bank manager got fired because of what he did for me. I really do believe that. But at the time, I didn't know that, right? Because I was hoping that CIBC Bank would do the right thing and fully investigate what the hell went on and hold Fraser Health Authority to account. But they didn't. Because they're working in partnership with Fraser Health Authority people. With respect to his accounts at CIBC, the CIBC POA. The CIBC POA was signed in the presence of and witnessed by a CIBC branch employee. Yeah, because they took him out to go see his mom, and I guess they took him out to the bank because that was the only way to get money transferred into his account and open up that registered savings plan, right? Because she'd been sitting on that money for 14 months, people. By March, it was pushing on 15 months, 16 months, right? That inheritance that they never told John about, right? So, you know, she had to take him to the bank to do that in order to be able to get that lump sum deposit, right? Employee. At the time, Mr. Duncan signed, okay. At the time, Mr. Duncan advised CIBC branch staff that the reason he had removed Miss Chorney as his power of attorney was that the money in his account was not being used for him, and he did not want any more money to come out of those accounts. I only looked after him, people, almost from the very first time I met him. And then I even took on looking after his sick wife at the worst point in her life and extended her life for an extra 4 more years. Okay? John didn't want to live in an apartment. He lived in an apartment with Joan for 25 years. He wanted to live in freaking houses. That's how we ended up in houses. Houses comes costs. But I'm the one that went into $40,000 in debt. And my debt load is still $40,000 in debt. Okay. I carried John for years. And John put in his fair share too. So that's just a bunch of hogwash. That's just feeding into that. You're taking advantage of the old person. Yeah, okay. Like I said, where was Eleanor in all those years? Why didn't she stop John from moving to Vancouver with me? Why didn't she stop John from buying that car for me in Alberta and coming to Alberta and get me? Why didn't she stop John doing that? Why didn't she stop John from moving into Marigold? Hell, I threw him out. His wife gave him back. Well, she didn't give him back. She sent him back. Why didn't Eleanor come the next day and get John if she was so concerned about John? Why didn't she get him when we were in that townhouse? She didn't. When we moved over here, she had 20 years to do it. Why didn't she do it then, people? Why? Because it's hogwash. That's why. Come from those accounts. At that time, Mr. Duncan also opened a new operating account. Well, yeah. If he already had an account, I've been locked out of it. I could get printouts. I could do deposits. I could pay bills. I just couldn't take out money because I had those 2 powers of attorney. So for over a year, I was getting printouts, and then all of a sudden, Eleanor started forking out $1,700 a pop, which told me that now they had moved him into a temporary care home. And that was around the time when I went and said, look, da-da-da-da, my card was still active. That's when his face changed, because I said, well, what's this? He goes, well, that's old folks registered saving plan. I said, oh, when did that start? Oh, but he couldn't tell me the balance in it. But his face changed, people. Then he just quietly went off and got me my enduring power of attorney, handed it to me, and told me good luck. Because he knew we got shafted. He knew. And here, they admit it. Also opened a new operating account. John had that account for 25 years plus, and then all of a sudden, just remember, I can't take money out of it, so there was no jeopardy. They were plotting and scheming on how to kick out my card, which they successfully did with one teller on 3 separate occasions, and I have fucking signatures to prove it on photocopy, you see, right? That's why if I go and hand in my card and they give me a new card and they want me to sign something, I say, well, I want a photocopy. They don't want to give me that photocopy with their signature on it because it's already been flagged because of the shady shit that they do. Okay, why don't they investigate that? They won't. They won't, because they know what they did was wrong, and not only are they doing it to John, they're doing it thousands of more. Okay, that's the point. He didn't need another operating account. The only operating account that he got was for his inheritance that he wasn't told about. Again, at this time, there was no concern regarding Mr. Duncan's competency. Yeah, okay, that's why I'm asking for the bank to investigate, right? Telling them what was going on with him at the hospital and at the care ward, right? Blah, 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 blah. And they're just punking me off. Go get a lawyer. You're being accused of this. Go get a lawyer. We're not giving you that. Go get a lawyer. Well, John's all drugged up. Sleeping, when he wasn't having a nervous breakdown after they took him across the way in a hammock in the bowels of a ferry. 9. The plaintiff complained to CIBC on or about March 31st, 2015 about the fact that the Chorney POA had been revoked. I started complaining right from the freaking get-go, people. I was asking for an investigation right from the get-go. I wrote some of that stuff down in my notice of civil claim. But of course they consider it to be incoherent, right? The plaintiff complained to CIBC on or about March 31st about the fact that the Chorney POA had been revoked. Well, it hadn't been revoked, though. That's the thing. Whatever was sent to me isn't legitimate. It's not legal. It's not, it doesn't hold its weight in court, people. It's fraud. That's what it is, okay? But when you're in a situation like mine, and if I went to court trying to present my evidence to the court, this guy that represents CIBC Bank would have just done another Andrew the Dragon, turned it into a mini fucking trial, right? A gong show, and then had it thrown out. Knowing that I'd come back, try and do an appeal, and then, but of course I have to waiver my fees first before I can go in front of a appeal board, right? And they'll take the waivering of fees as their opportunity to create another little mini trial, humiliate me, mock me, criticize me, down talk to me, treat me like I'm garbage, tell me to get fucking lost, and that would be it. It would be over. And refuse my waiver of fees because they already had their trial and prosecuted me and punished me. Okay? So I just didn't go. But for the life of me, I lost this. So even if I wanted to go, I couldn't freaking find it. I only found it today, and it's been since 2011. 2018, April 11th of 2018. It was in my sewing room. It just disappeared. I couldn't find it. And where I found it today, I looked before and it wasn't there. But for whatever reason, I found it today. Because this is going in with my document list on top. It's one of the first things that the provincial government of British Columbia, Canada needs to look at. But they already know people, because whatever they did to John, they've taken it to thousands of old people across this province, and they use the Emergency Act as a means to do it, and told those old people the exact same thing that they told John. You can't see the kids. You can't see Judy. You can't do that because you're not well enough. Where have we heard that before, people, in the last 2 years? This, what they did to John, was in 2015. And now they're doing it to thousands at the whim of, Dr. God, Dr. Death, and her orders. Okay, so, let me get just back to finishing this. Okay? Only because I found it today, people, and I've been looking for it for years. Alright? So we know that they opened up another account, even though I couldn't take out money, and they were conniving and scheming on how to remove my access with my card to get printouts in terms of the transactions, right, in terms of what she was spending money on. And as soon as I noticed 1,700, I said, on YouTube, got a video on that, started talking about, I bet you they put him in an old folks home now. They got what they wanted, and now they got him in an old folks home because that's what they pay, right? 1,700 and up, okay? That was just for the initial fee, and then they attach on all these other fees, and they just suck up the money. But she already got the inheritance in that second account. That's why that bank manager's face freaking turned green. When he got into it and started looking, he couldn't tell me the dollar amount. He explained to me what it was. And then he just quietly moseyed off and got me the enduring power of attorney and told me good luck. And then he probably got fired for helping me, people. The government needs to investigate that. And if that man got fired, then he needs to have restitution because he didn't deserve to be fired because he did his job. Okay? Because I was a long-standing client to this account. Okay? And with Mr. Duncan, John, right? Right? You know, we've been there since we opened up our accounts, 2 separate accounts together. He opened up his account because, you know, he was having Joan bankrupt him again for the second time, third time, whatever freaking time it was. Plus, he had already paid off all the bills. Then she racked them all up because he got that money, right? That little bit of car insurance. So he paid off all the bills. And by the time he come and got me in Alberta, and bought the car from my uncle, and then came up and got me and drove back with me. By the time we got back, he started telling me how she had already racked up another $15,000, and he didn't know what the hell she was spending it on, because she was freaking bulimic, people, and she had serious mental health issues. And that's when I said, well, gee, John, well, you know, maybe you'd like to go open up a bank account. I came back in June. We didn't open this up until October. It says October. So for months I was listening to him crying, and I said, fuck, John, okay, well, maybe start this and think about getting your own place. I'll help you find a place. Okay. And then when it came to get him his own place, he got cold feet because he knew he couldn't live by himself. But what the hell was I supposed to do? And I listened to it for years. The whole time I was on Foul Bay, and the whole time I was on Ellery, and then finally I said that, okay, fine, we'll get a house. And I got a 2-story house. It was $1,200 a month, right? Upper floor, they did really nice. The carpet, it had beautiful big bay windows, but they rushed us through the basement. And the guy was living down there who I guess owned the house, somebody. Anyway, they rushed us through, so I never really got a chance to look at it. And then when I moved in, it was kind of like this freaking yard. All I did for a year was gut it, people. I was cleaning mold, like mold in the rafters. Like, it was disgusting. It was so disgusting. John couldn't live down there. He never once went down there. And the little bit that I did manage to get near the end, by that time, they wanted us out, so they forced us out so they could get college students to come in and start rebuilding the basement after I got it. And it polluted my body with the amount of mold that was down there. But because they rushed us through, and you know, Victoria is a small city, not too many houses to rent, and they had, you know, it was really nice upstairs. And I didn't know. I didn't know about this yard, people. I just didn't know. But I was determined to get the job done so that Joan and John could have their own kitchen. You know, they could be husband and wife, and you know, John could be on his terms with Joan, right? And Joan liked living by herself. That's why she sent him back to me, people. She liked it. She was dirty. She didn't like to clean. Debbie didn't like to clean. John was always cleaning, and he couldn't keep up with it. But if Joan wanted to move in, it was a whole suite down there. I wouldn't have stopped them. She didn't move in. You know why she moved in, people? Because she couldn't live in assisted living anymore. They refused to give her assisted living. It was either that, in terms of going to long-term care, and she was crying on with John, oh no, they're not letting me assisted living no more, you know, blah, blah, blah. I have to go into long-term care. I don't want to be like my mom where, you know, nobody comes to visit me and blah, 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 hoo, boo, hoo, hoo. And John says, oh, gee, Judy, please let Joan come. Let her come live with us. Yes, she's got this problem. Yes, we know. Yes, but please, Judy, please. I don't want Joan being alone in her last days. I said, fine, John, whatever makes you happy. I've got the kids. Don't worry. We'll get through it. We'll stick together as a family. And then she came, and she got 4 extra years of quality living, being free, with a supportive family who loved her. I didn't love her. I tolerated her. The kids loved her, though. Shimei really loved her. I started complaining the minute they locked me out, telling them all the funky stuff that was going on. So for them to say there was no concerns, they're lying. I was pleading with them to investigate Fraser Health Authority staff. They completely ignored me. People were more interested in accusing me of abusing John, as they were conspiring how to kick me out of his account and hide things. So that they could steal his money for Eleanor and profit from it. Because if John would have gotten it and we would have known about it, Shimei would have been a nurse by 2017, 16. She would have been a fully fledged registered nurse. I don't think that was too much to ask for, considering everything all said and done, right? Being that John loved her and would have wanted that for her. Not Eleanor, not Cheryl, not CIBC Bank, not the school system, not Fraser Health Authority. You know, they were more interested in harvesting her body than they were to see her be a nurse, okay? Let's face it. And you know, the more I go around in circles and 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 circles with the same old stupid, stinking, rotten, lousy story, you know, it's like you have to come to terms with being a targeted family, because it's beyond being a targeted individual, right? It's like my landlady says, accept it. You'll never have another house like this. Get rid of your stuff and be prepared to have nothing. Okay? It's almost like that, where you have to be prepared to be harvested, because that's just your lot in life. That's what other people see you as only capable of having or being. Because it's the same old story over and over and over and over and over and over, and it doesn't go anywhere except add on another injury, right? First it was Sierra, then it was Andre and Sierra, then it was Uncle John, then it was me too, though, cut off of welfare in 2003 with 5 dependent children and couldn't go to work, right? So I was in that mix, only in a different kind of way, right? And then Sierra, and then Amari, right? You know what I'm saying? It's the same old story, people. It doesn't change. This was in 2018. It's the same story, people. Do you honestly think the government's going to investigate it? When it went to court with Fraser Health Authority, the judge asked Andrew the Dragon, "Where's John? What happened to John when he left the temporary care ward?" That lawyer just stood there and said, "I don't know. I don't know." And instead of making inquiries and demanding an investigation from a judge's perspective to find out where John was, he said, "Oh, okay, well, dismissed. Oh, well, dismissed." Because it's a game with them, people. They're profiteering off of individuals like John. John is just the tip of the iceberg, and it came into a head in 2020? With Dr. God and Dr. Death and her orders telling tens of thousands of old people that they can't see their loved ones because they weren't better yet. Okay? Same old freaking boo-boo mantra that was going on with John in 2015. And it doesn't change. So there's a part that's nagging on me, thinking, well, just accept it. Just accept that you're going to be harvested. That's your lot in life. That's the ticket that you got. You and your family. Because the sooner you can accept it, maybe you'll have a little bit of peace before they come and you know what, right? Because you know they're coming. Because the pattern is already there, right? Don't think I find any pleasure in this, people. I don't. There is absolutely no pleasure in anything about any of this. Whether it's Sierra, Shemay, Amari, Andre, John, my other kids, me, whatever. My neighbors, the ones that just suddenly disappear out of nowhere, to never be heard from again. The lover doesn't know where her husband is, right? The cops don't know where the criminal is. Right? The military SWAT team doesn't know where the criminal is, right? But this guy was such a big bad guy that the worst that he did was stand out by the road and throw out furniture on the road. Okay. That's a real crime of the century now, isn't it? But he's gone. Nobody knows where he is. Okay. He had no place to go except in that white van that was specifically designed for a body. Let's face it. And now they're going to try and cover that shit up. Well, they are, because he's disappeared. He wasn't there, or he escaped. Which one? Did he escape, or was he just never there? How come you can't find him? Where did he go? The plaintiff complained to CIBC on or about March 31st. No, pretty much from the get-go I complained, asked them to investigate. That's when they informed me that I was being accused of elderly abuse because they were thinking I was stealing his money. About the fact that the Chorney power of attorney had been revoked. Probably when I got that funky little letter from Eleanor, I called him up and said, what's this funky little letter, right? You know, you need to investigate that. Had been revoked. In response to the plaintiff's complaint, CIBC escalated the Chorney POA had been revoked. In response to, the plaintiff complaint, CIBC escalated the issue and undertook a more detailed examination of the circumstances. No, because they had already judged me, deemed me guilty, and were already making backroom deals with Eleanor to transfer funds from a holding account that was directly related to an inheritance that nobody told John about until he was all doped up and in the bowels of a ferry, being rushed off to the Victoria General Hospital, being saying, like, look, this is how we found him, as he almost died. And then they told him that he can't see the kids and he can't see me because he wasn't better yet, and he never did get better. And what they're talking about here is where I wrote that this guy on the phone was telling me to go to the doctor, get a note from the family doctor saying that John was competent, and then they would let me do whatever I needed to do or wanted to do or whatever it was, right? And then when I'd call back, they'd say, oh, no, we spoke to our team, our team of lawyers, and they want you to go back to the doctor and go get a letter saying that he wasn't competent. They wanted a letter saying that he was competent, and they wanted a letter saying that he wasn't competent. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing, other than they were being shifty, shady, and cutting backroom deals. And was hoping that I was a drug addict, or an alcoholic, or a pill popper, or mentally incompetent. Because they knew I had no money. And you know how they like to judge poor people in general because of lack of money. Circumstances, escalated the issue and undertook a more detailed examination of the circumstances and documents concerning the dispute Chorney POA, the Gilding POA, and the CIBC POA, because I guess CIBC ended up taking power of attorney at one point so that they could transfer it over to Eleanor. A CIBC representative duly advised the plaintiff that the issue had been referred to CIBC's legal department and was being investigated. No, they were trying to figure out how to cover their tracks. Then they started working on kicking out my card. And like I said, they used one teller on 3 different occasions. I have her signature 3 times on 3 different cards that I had to get because she fucked my cards over so that it kicked out John's card so that I couldn't access a printout on the statement to see what Eleanor was spending the money on. Because once I noticed it was $1,700 and I mentioned it on YouTube, that's when she went off and put the pressure on the bank to do something about it. Right? But I already got it printed out. I know through my printouts when they John away like a dirty secret in the old folks' home, because that was always the mission once they got the money, because Eleanor wasn't going to look after John. Because if she was going to look after John, she had 50 years to do it. And I was in his life for 35 years. And she could have came and looked after John and Joan. But if you notice, they both moved over here with me. Joan didn't want to stay in Victoria waiting for Eleanor to show up to visit, because they wouldn't have done it. That's why she moved over here. That's why John pleaded, please let her come. Let her be here happy. If you leave her in Victoria in the old folks' home, she'll never get a visitor. Never. Not even Debbie will visit her. I said, fine, John. Whatever makes you happy. And she came. And I looked after her for 3 years straight in this house. In my house. And then I took John back and forth every week, 3 times a week, or whatever it was, to go see Joan in that freaking old folks' home. To which they ended up fucking killing her by turning off the IV. Okay? Because the doctor said she was going to die in December of 2013, and she did. And they made sure of it with their immigrant workers, people. 10. On or about April 27, 2015, a CIBC representative contacted Mr. Duncan by telephone and spoke with him to confirm his intentions and instructions. Now you have to remember, I think the kids went in April, the first part of April, and they were ran out of there by John's sister, who reminded John that he wasn't allowed to speak to the kids because he wasn't better yet. And she threatened to call security on the kids to the point where they practically ran out of there. Okay? Because they didn't want to get arrested. As John saying, I want to see the kids. I want to see the kids. And that hag putting her face right up in front of John's mouth and face and spitting all over him, telling him he's not allowed to see the kids because he's not better yet. Why doesn't CIBC Bank investigate that? And spoke with him to confirm his intentions and the instructions. Well, yeah, because he wasn't allowed to do anything except what Eleanor told him to do. He wasn't allowed to see the kids. He wasn't allowed to come back home to us, right? He wasn't allowed to talk to Paul, the lawyer, right? He wasn't allowed anything, people, except what this bitch wanted. Mr. Duncan confirmed that he was... This is a long video. Aware that Chorney POA had been revoked, what was he supposed to do? They were all running around looking for money, trying to get him to get mad at me, saying that I stole his money, as they were doping him up while they did it. Keeping him doped up most of the time too, because he was sleeping. We got that on recording. And replaced with the Gilling POA and CIBC POA. And that he was aware of the documentation, and this is all being done on the phone, people, okay, that had been submitted to CIBC in this regard. Why didn't they take him to a bank? Why did it have to be done on a phone? On or about April 28th of 2015, a CIBC representative contacted the plaintiff by telephone and advised her that CIBC had contacted Mr. Duncan and confirmed his instructions and intentions, and absence medical evidence challenging Mr. Duncan's medical capacity. Going forward, CIBC would only be able to take instructions and directions concerning Mr. Duncan's accounts from Mr. Duncan or Mrs. Gilding. Again, at this time, there was no concern regarding Mr. Duncan's competency. Well, if that was the case, why were they asking me to go to the doctor, this Mr. Simone or whatever the hell his name was, in the beginning, telling me to go to the family doctor and get a letter saying that John was incompetent? And then when I'd phone back asking if he figured out anything as to what was going on, because at first they didn't even really tell me that I was being accused. I got that information from Paul. Then they started to spill the beans and saying that I was in dispute. They said, oh yes, that's what they would say. They would say there was a dispute. There was a dispute between me and somebody. I was in dispute with, like, I guess the power of attorney or something. But they wouldn't tell me who I was in dispute with, people. They didn't mention John's sister's name. They just said that there was a dispute going on. And I'm like, well, who am I disputing? Well, we can't tell you that. Like, it's just sick. Sick shit. And then, I explained what was going on and how they got him out of there and that kind of stuff to the best of my ability at that time. And then they would say, this Mr. Simone dude or whoever he was on the phone was telling me to go to the family doctor and get a letter saying that John was incompetent. Then I'd say, well, that's kind of hard, and then I'd phone back, asked if he got any more information in terms of who I was disputing, and then he would turn around and say, go to the doctor and go get a letter saying that John was competent. And they never did tell me who I was disputing. I think I found that out from that freaking one good freaking bank manager. Finally, after all that time. At all material times, Mr. Duncan and the plaintiff had a joint account held in trust for Andre Tyson, to which still requires John's signature, a man who was competent enough to open it up with me, right? And was competent to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars into a secret account, right? Was competent enough to say, yeah, give my loving sister who wants to rescue me after all these years, even though she's had plenty of opportunity to do so before that time, right? And he's just going to walk away and ignore this. Just abandon it. Like he abandoned the kids, like he abandoned me. The Andre account. It still requires John's signature to release the $92 or $98, assuming that the bank hasn't stolen it yet. Okay? Can't do nothing with it, people. Just like I can't do nothing with Shimei's RRSP fund that John and I opened up when she was a baby. It's good to 2032. Can't do shit. It requires his signature to take out what little bit of money is in there, which isn't a lot, because I took out money when she graduated from school, and I don't know, we did something with it, and then we started putting payments back in, but when they took them, I canceled the payments, right? And it's just sitting there waiting for John's signature, just like Andre's account. So for a man that's so competent to do all this other shit, why would he abandon Andre's account? Why would he abandon Shimei's account? We know why I got stuck with the bills. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But why would he do that to a little boy that he loved? Why did he do that to a Shimei when he never held a baby in his life until Shimei was born? Because as soon as Shimei was born, she went straight into Uncle John's arms. And he was on the top of the world. Because Joan couldn't birth children. Debbie's adopted. So that was the first time John ever got to, one, see a baby being born, and never mind, be the first one to hold baby. So he loves Shimei. So why would he turn his back on Shimei when he's got it so much fucking together to be wheeling and dealing in hundreds of thousands of fucking dollars, right? Sneaking behind backroom doors and this and that and, you know, and sticking his sister on me. Okay. Doesn't add up, people. To CIBC's knowledge, Andres Chorny is the plaintiff's grandson. At all material times, the Andre account had approximately $34. Yeah, well, actions speak louder than words, people. It's not the amount of money that counts, it's the principle around it. Okay? It is the principle. I think there's like $98 in there now, assuming that CIBC Bank didn't take it and keep it for themselves. Okay? Because it does require John's signature, and he's been dead since 2018 of January. And they took him in 2015. And the only reason there's that little extra money in there is because somebody at some point in the past made a donation through PayPal, and I had my son help me go through it, and it went through after we clicked yes, right? And so it topped it off a little bit. I mean, for all I know, there could be money sitting up in donations, and I could click yes if I was to go into that PayPal and click yes if there's donations in there, and it would go straight to that account. And I couldn't touch it because it requires John's signature. But for a man that was so fucking all together, signing over everything to his sister in the bat of a fucking eye, right? You know, opening up new accounts, right? Registered saving plans so that, you know, money could be transferred into it. And, you know, for all that, why didn't he take care of something that he started when these children were either born? We opened up that account. I borrowed $3,500, people. I borrowed, which I still owe. I borrowed $3,500 on my London life insurance policy, because that's the kind of policy that I have, right? And I took that $3,500, and we went and we opened up that account with John. And then from there, I'd go to Staples, and I was buying things to take the government to the Supreme Court of Canada. That's how I paid for that stuff that's going to be submitted as documents for my lawsuit. I bought the wipeout boards, the pens. I had to do repairs on my car, gas, anything that related to fighting for Andre before I end up getting a lawyer, after I was told, first of all, that I wouldn't qualify for a lawyer and that I should get used to just getting to the idea that my grandson was going to be adopted out. I said, fuck that. I'll just file a lawsuit with the Supreme Court. And I borrowed the money on my life insurance, and then we put it in with John, and then I buy things to work on the lawsuit. That's how it happened. And then we had that little fundraiser because I didn't qualify for a lawyer, and my son did something, so he opened up the PayPal, and that's how I guess $60 came in to help with a lawyer. But then I had to go to court with Sierra, and I'd already put an application in for custody at that time for Andre, so I was part of the proceeding. And the judge didn't like me representing myself in provincial court, and that's when he told me to go back to legal aid and put an application in for a lawyer, and that's how I got Paul. And then I just basically stopped working on the lawsuit, but I'd already spent all the money because I'd already started working on it, because I was told for months that I wasn't qualified for a lawyer, and I felt I had no choice but to take it to the Supreme Court. But that count remains, with that money still in there, still requiring John's signature, even though John's freaking initial bank account is probably already closed. It's probably already closed. We know what they did, people. They just, you think Eleanor left that money in there after John died? No, she closed the account if she didn't close it sooner than that. So by closing that account, where does that leave Andre's account? Can I trust the bank to be honest with me? Fuck no. Sorry. Boo-boo no. I can't trust the bank to be honest with me, people. There's nothing honest about them. Nothing honest about what they did. Nothing honest about their response to my lawsuit. Nothing. The government needs to investigate, but there's the crutch. The government is involved because what they did to Uncle John in 2015, they brought it to a max in 2020 and 2021. Okay? Same mantra. You're not well enough yet. You know that. You can't see the kids. You know that. You're not well enough yet. Do you know how many old people have heard those words from all these immigrant workers for the last 2 years? 2020, 2021. Uncle John was just the tip of the iceberg, people. The plan was already in play in 2015. In light of the foregoing dispute, and don't forget, they didn't tell me who I was disputing with. They just said there was a dispute. On or about May 4th, 2015, CIBC placed a requirement on the Andre account that all transactions would be required both the plaintiff's and Mr. Duncan's joint signature. So they even locked me out of that. Do they have a dead man's account in holding at CIBC Bank just waiting for him to show up and do the right thing, being that he was so fucking responsible in dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars, but he couldn't take care of a little boy that came from foster care for a measly $34? Yeah, okay, people. I guess he got drunk off that money, eh? He got so drunk off that money that he forgot about Andre and Shimei, right? And the rest of us, right? Until finally they just tucked him away like a dirty secret, right? After they got what they wanted. Can't stress it enough. On or about May 5th, 2015, a CIBC representative wrote to Miss Chorney stating, "Dear Miss Chorney, the CIBC Client Care Center," because that's where you were required to phone to try and deal with this shit. I like how they just put sincerely at the end, but they don't put his last name, which I think is Simone. Has been informed of your concerns. As this matter falls within my area of responsibility, your file has been assigned to me for review. As per our conversation on April 28th, 2015, I informed you that the new power of attorney documents had been provided to CIBC for Mr. John Duncan. The new documents revoke the old power of attorney on Mr. Duncan's accounts. Going forward, CIBC will not be able to provide you with any information on Mr. Duncan's accounts. But you see, that's not true though, people, because I had my own card. if this was true, what they said, my card would have been kicked out automatically through the system, but they couldn't do it that way. The only way they could do it was by using a funky teller who put her job on the line, because what is in the dark will come out in the light sooner or later, where she committed fraud by kicking out one card, then kicking out another card, so that it kicked out John's card. 3 different signatures, 3 different transactions that fucked up John's card so that I couldn't get the printouts anymore. Otherwise, I had a new card in the mail, and I was still signed on as legally power of attorney, because they never took it to court. They never took it to the public guardian and trustee. Neither the bank did it, or nor did Eleanor did it. Whatever they did, it wasn't done legally. I guess on the day with John on the video telling me to go get Paul on February 19th, I guess that was the day when he was incompetent. That's the day that would have worked out good to go to the doctor and get a note saying, write it down, where John's incompetent and I need to take care of business. But on the 20th, when he signed over power of attorney to whoever, Eleanor, with some healthcare staff, because he was still at Old Yale Center when that happened, people. Okay? I guess on that day, he was competent. And I suppose I should have went to the doctor then and asked for a letter of competency and just taken it for face value. Right? A lot of mindfuckery, eh? Don't you think? The new document revoked the old power of attorney on Mr. Duncan's account, even though it had been there for 25 years plus, and the power of attorney was there for 16 years plus, because there was 2 separate times. Going forward, CIBC will not be able to provide you with any information on Mr. Duncan's accounts unless they are joint with you, which would be Andre's. I was able to confirm that the account you questioned, account number, blah, 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 they just got a bunch of X's there with a 1, just a bunch of X's, is currently joint between you and Mr. Duncan. That's the one that we opened up with my life insurance money that I borrowed to fight for Andre, to take it to the Supreme Court to get Andre back. Joint between you and Mr. Duncan. There is a message on the account that it is a trust for Andre Tyson, which we were starting to make deposits into at $40 a month to build it up for Andre. But as soon as they took him and I realized what happened, I called up the company and I canceled it. I just felt it was just best to cancel it. But it didn't cancel the account. I just canceled the deposits going into the account from that account. Because, you know, shady shit was going on. So I just put it on hold. But John and I, we planned on paying until the end. Andre would have trust fund, but not anymore because CIBC robbed him of it, people. But more importantly, they robbed him of his Uncle John. Okay? The $34 is just the principal in terms of just the principle of everything that happened and why it happened. It's like egg on their face. That's what it's like. It's like that $34 is egg on CIBC Bank's face. That is in trust for Andre Tyson. CIBC has placed a multiple signatures required message on this account, which means any transaction, because they were fucking me over. They were trying to hurt me, right? As they were falsely accusing me of things, falsely judging me, falsely changing the files, falsely appointing people that didn't belong there, and robbing John of his family and his money, because in the end, his brain turned to jello. Because he had no choice. Which means any transactions requested on the account must have both account holders' signatures on it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this matter for you. I regret any inconvenience this may cause you. For your reference, information on CIBC's complaint escalation process can be found at. Anything like this ever happens to you, people, don't be afraid. Just file a fucking lawsuit. Sorry, file a boo-boo lawsuit. Okay? Don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. Sincerely. On September 16th of September 18th, 2015, a vet further CIBC form titled General Power of Attorney. Oh, now we're going into September, right? Because they're trying to figure out how to get rid of me without taking it to court. Because if it goes to court, the beans will be spilled in terms of why they were even doing any of this after all these years in the first place. They would have had to expose the fact that he inherited hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't want it to go to court for that to be exposed. So they were doing every dirty trick they could under the book, behind closed doors, hoping that I would just go crawl my ass out in the street and die with the rest of the people that they screw over. Because we're targeted for this kind of stuff. That's how they get rich. Power of attorney appointing Mrs. Gilding as Mr. Duncan's power of attorney was executed at a CIBC branch. So I don't, they're saying that it was changed in February, then in April again, and then in March, and then in September. Like, how many times do you have to change the power of attorney without going to court? Not even once. All for $34 and a pension plan. Okay, hold on a minute. Okay, so now keep in mind, do you see how I'm having to do this? I told you, this eye is half dead already. It doesn't work. I can't see. I have to be a pirate here. Now, look how long this video is. And I still have that much more yet to read. Now, let's just imagine if I was in court trying to talk to a judge and explain to him my side of the story with the actual paperwork to coincide with what I'm saying. Okay? It took one teller to kick out my card, and it took 3 different transactions with the cards to kick out John's card just so that I couldn't get the printout, because that was the one thing that they couldn't stop. And because we got new cards, right? They knew I had a new card, so that when my card ran out, in terms of, you know how they always updating cards every year or whatever it is. Well, John got his card and I got my card, but I still had my card. I was getting printouts. That's when I noticed 1700 was coming out. That's when I knew that they put him into long-term care, and they were getting desperate, right? They were doing all their internal shit, not for the benefit of John, but to transfer That inheritance, they were trying to avoid taking it to court because they didn't want the subject of that inheritance coming up. Although I'm sure if it went that road, it would have been just as funky, okay? Because, birds of a feather flock together. So, it's like when I called up the public guardian and trustee on the advice of Paul, the lawyer, saying, ask for an investigation as to what happened to John. I did that when I called back asking if there was a result. They just said they had done it and there was no problems, and they hung up on me. They didn't even have the courtesy to phone me and let me know that they were done with their investigation. I had to call them. But you see, the thing is they didn't investigate, though, people, because these are all professional people under a criminal mindset that operate on a beehive mentality that develops a criminal organization. It only takes 3 individuals to form a criminal organization. And just because somebody's in a public position doesn't mean that they don't have the ability to behave like a criminal, because they're the ones that usually are the ones that are seeking out more money, have access to internal files, can spread rumors through the whole workforce and get everybody on a mob coming after me, accusing me of things that aren't true, just so that they can, 1, secure their employment, being that they're immigrant workers, a large majority of them, and God forbid if they get sent back from where they came from. 2, some of them probably got bribes. No doubt about it. Others were threatened with their job. If you speak, like the one nurse, right? There was a nurse when I went to the nurse's station when he was in that temporary care ward. She was a black woman, right? And I said, I want a list, a printout, right? Mr. Duncan and I, not just me, but Mr. Duncan and I, we want a printout of the medications that you're giving him, because as far as we know, there are none. Just a calcium pill. But don't forget, John was, some days he couldn't even put on his sweater. Other days he was more alert. Other days he was just going like this in his wheelchair. Right? Whatever it was, people, they were drugging him. She said, and we know this because of that nurse ended up spilling the beans with Sierra, and because Sierra's an addict, she knew exactly what was going on. She knew why they were making him eat. She knew exactly why he had to eat after taking that pill. Right? Or before, like lunch. You eat the lunch and then the pill. I don't know. One or the other. You have to eat with the pill, either or, right? She said that the only thing that they were giving him was a puffer. But that's not true. And she refused, people. She refused. They all refused. Even the social workers. John asked her himself, I want my records for my medication. If I want to see. And he just refused. Wouldn't give him a, just fucking, these are evil people that we're dealing with, okay? Like, seriously, you don't know. And they don't just target one, they target the whole family. And they come in groups, okay? Because they're all running on the same freaking engine. Money, 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 even if it's just $34, okay? Like I said, that $34 is egg on CIBC Bank's face. How do they expect a dead man to sign for it when they basically put him there? Appointing Mrs. Gilding as Mr. Duncan's power of attorney was executed at CIBC branch in the presence of a CIBC employee, the second CIBC POA. So they revoked it on February 20th, the day after John told me to go get a lawyer. And then they did something again in April, then in fucking March, then in fucking May, and then they turned around and did something even more in September. I'd have to find out when they kicked out that card. Because honestly, I think it was in 2016, to which whatever they did was insignificant because they never took it to court. They did everything in their power to avoid taking it to court because they didn't want the beans being spilled that thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, was being deposited into a shadow account that they opened up as John was being illegally drugged. And told that he can't see his loved ones until he got better, and that he knew that. And interesting how he never got better, don't you think? So much so that he couldn't even deal with a $34 account that was for a little boy that came back from foster care so that John and I could fight for Andre. Okay? John wanted to be in the fight. That's why his name was there. He wanted Andre home. Otherwise, he would never have put his John Henry down. But he got hundreds of thousands of dollars and then just decided to heck with Andre. Just let him grovel over that $34, just sitting there doing nothing. At all material times, CIBC complied. No, they did not. Complied with all requirements. Yeah, okay. Now, that's the thing. If I get in front of a judge, the first thing that the judge is going to do is, you're taking too long. Hurry up, Miss Jordy. Snide. Be snide with me throughout the whole thing. Will tell me I'm talking too loud. Will tell me that I can't do this because it's uncomfortable for him to look at me struggle, right? That I don't make sense because I haven't quite had enough time to fully explain myself yet, so therefore I'm a waste of the court's time. Do you see it coming, people? I see it coming because I've already been through it. But I have to try. And when I fall flat on my face, because I got pushed down, I'll get back up, and I'll file another one for discriminating against the poorest of the poor. And I'll bring up the same shit, if they haven't killed me by then. At all material times, CIBC complied with all requirements and industry best practices to ensure that it was complying with Mr. Duncan's intentions. Yeah, he intended just to let Andre wallow in misery for the rest of Andre's life while John went off in the freaking yonder with hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars for all we know for the way his sister was acting, right? And then decided to put himself in an old folks home and die alone, an old, lonely old man, crying for the kids, knowing that he never got better and that he would never see them again until death. And now he's got two of them. And he's just waiting for me and the rest of us. Now, whether Joan is there or not, I said, John, when we die, this is the way it's going to be, John. Next time, Joan will live over there. I'm living over here. And you can choose where you want to live. But I'll never live with Joan again. In death. Or in life. The one time I did it, fine. No problem. But when I'm dead, forget it. If you want to live with her, you can go live with her and come visit me. Or you can live with me and you can go visit her like the good old days. He said he wanted to live with me. So he's waiting for me, people. And he's already got Shimei and Sierra. And I'm sure Joan is being looked after. Because Shimei loved Joan. But Joan liked living by herself. So when I show up, it will probably be like the good old days. He'll live with me, and she'll live over there, and everybody will visit and be one big fucking happy family. Again, in death. And CIBC Bank can choke on their $34 with their egg on their face. Right along with Fraser Health Authority and their staff. Who are completely corrupt to the core. And need to go back from wherever the frickin' they came from, in my opinion. Because they bring nothing good to this country. Absolutely nothing. And industry best practices to ensure that it was complying with Mr. Duncan's intentions and instructions and properly revoke the Chorney POA in favor of the Gilding POA, CIBC POA, and the second CIBC POA. So somehow CIBC intervened, bought time for Gilding to wheel and deal even more. Okay? But clearly, whatever happened started on February 20th of 2015, the next day after John told me to go get Paul. And I'm pretty sure it was February 23rd when they put him in a hammock, all doped up, put him in the bowels of a ferry, took him across the water, and then immediately drove him to the emergency ward and said, look how we found him, and he practically died. And then from that point forward, they kept him drugged for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And he slept and slept and slept and slept, as Cheryl was saying, as they were accusing me of stealing his wallet. And they needed his ID so that they could do his banking for him. Because that's what John wanted. And he just happened to forget about Andre and Shimei, even in the year 2022. Division 3, additional facts. CIBC does not rely on any additional facts at this time, but reserves the right to amend this amended response to civil claim to plead material facts. You see, I don't understand what material facts are, people. They asked for facts, I wrote down the facts, and they mocked my facts and said I'm incoherent and I don't make no fucking sense. But they're the ones telling me to go to the doctor and get a letter saying John's competent. And then the next time I talk to them, they're telling me to go back to the same doctor and get a letter saying that John's incompetent. Because they themselves didn't know what the hell they were doing. And if they knew what they were doing, then they did a pretty bang up job, though, don't you think? Yeah, they did, because they turned around in 2020 and turned around and did it to tens of thousands of other Uncle Johns and Aunt Jones. John was just the test run. They were just testing the water, perfecting their technique, having all their ducks in order and their bases covered so they wouldn't get caught when the big bang came off. In terms of the big net, you know? John was just the little fish, just the tip of the iceberg. But when they came in 2020, it was the big net. That's when they thousands and thousands, tens of thousands. You can't see the kids. You can't see your family. You're not better yet. Okay? Get it through your head. You're not better yet. You know that. Shut up. It's an order. I'm going to have to get myself a patch. This amended response to civil claim to plead material facts should the claim be amended and a reasonable cause of action against CIBC be articulated. I asked for $10 million and a whole bunch of other little things in there related to the kids. Response to relief sought. No relief known or otherwise permissible by law. I requested $10 million and a few other things in there. Is sought in Part 2 of the claim to the extent the claim seeks relief against the defendant and elsewhere in the claim. The defendant does not consent to the granting of any relief. I don't know what they're saying there, people. Just twisting words around. Whether sought in Part 2 or in any other part of the claim. If you can't write for them, if you can't write exactly like them, are you done yet, Miss Chorney? You're wasting my time, Miss Chorney. I have a date. Hurry up, Miss Chorney. The defendant opposes the granting of all relief sought in the claim, including in any paragraphs of Part 2 of the claim. The defendant takes no position on the granting of relief sought in paragraph nil of Part 2 of the claim. Legal basis. And that's another thing. I don't know what to say with legal basis. They wanted court cases. I tried to find something that I thought that maybe could match up, but they should be treating Uncle John as an original with his own freaking issues, his own court case, and not try and bring in other fucking court cases to muddy the water so that they could throw it out of court based on some judge from some freaking God knows where, from a different time and era. Like, just shady crap. That's all it is. The claim, as filed, does not comply with Rule 3.1 and 3.7 of the Supreme Court Civil Rules, as it does not set out a concise statement of the material facts giving rise to the claim. That's A. B is nothing there. C sets out a concise summary of the legal basis for the relief sought. Almost done. D is nothing. E is show in with representative capacity the plaintiff sues to the extent that is the plaintiff's intention. F provides the data collection information required in the appendix of the form, or G otherwise comply with Rule 3.7. So I guess I better look that up, right? I was just looking at that binder on my last video. Okay, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, so I'm going to pull that out and try and read those things and try and understand what I'm supposed to do, people. But of course I won't make it, okay? Because hurry up, Miss Chorney, you're taking up too much of the court's time here, you know. You're not paying for this, right? No viable cause of action has been articulated, and no viable cause of action exists by the plaintiff against CIBC. The plaintiff has brought this action in her own name. Well, yeah, because I had to. What else? I did it with the family as a whole, including Uncle John. It's the whole family. Everybody's name is there. It is with Fraser Health Authority. I don't remember about CIBC Bank, but I had enduring power of attorney, and power of attorney, I was speaking on behalf of Uncle John and his family and my right to exercise power of attorney, okay? And to protect Uncle John. Or at least try to. And let the bank know that they can't get away with doing stuff like this to people. Period. Okay? The plaintiff has brought this action in her own name, yet appears to raise, among other things, allegations in relation to the obligations and duties owed by CIBC to Mr. Duncan. Well, yeah, because they failed him, people. They set him up to be robbed. And they set him up for him to lose his family permanently and to be isolated and basically tortured until he died, with being told that he can never see the kids again in his whole life because he wasn't better yet. And he never did get better, and he never did see the kids again. And he was alone, waiting like Joan, or waiting, he was alone in a position like Joan would have been if she wouldn't have came over here. The reason she came over here, people, was so that she wouldn't be alone waiting for Eleanor and the sisters to go visit her. John knew that they weren't going to go visit her because he knew what his family was like, and that's why he pleaded with me for her to come over here so that she wouldn't be alone. And they turned around and they put him in the position of being alone, waiting for them to show up, to which I'm sure was far and few in between once they got what they wanted, because as soon as they got what they wanted, they put him in an old folks' home. And they wouldn't even allow the kids to go see him because he never got better yet. But they got what they wanted thanks to CIBC Bank and Fraser Health Authority and their staffs. One couldn't do what one did without the assistance of the other. Two peas in a pod. And that's why they put out the big net in 2020 and 2021, because the system was already in place. They had lots of practice. Only thing is, people don't fight back. And if they do, they go broke if they have money. Some of them might be successful, but a lot of them probably not. And many of them just don't fight back because they don't know how. And then even if you try, you have to be prepared to be constantly insulted and gaslighted and threatened and terrorized and gang-stalked and lose your family members along the way as you fight. Like I said, this was not a coincidence that this should show up at my door on the day that Shemaine was murdered in my house. Where am I? Where am I? Do you see that date? That was the day this showed up at my house, with Shemaine being murdered on the same day. That was not a coincidence. Okay? It was not a coincidence. That was a message. And then they went after Sierra and did what they did with Sierra. Okay? And they did what they did to Amari. Because they're all the same. The claim is frivolous, vexatious. What page is this? Yeah, I was reading that. Otherwise, comply with Rule 3.7. No viable cause of action. Okay. The plaintiff does not have standing or authority to demand access. Okay, hold on. So, no viable cause of action has been articulated, and no viable cause of action exists by the plaintiff against CIBC. The plaintiff has brought this action in her own name, yet appears to raise, among other things, allegations in relation to the obligations and duties owed by CIBC to Mr. Duncan. The plaintiff does not have standing or authority to demand access to documents and information about Mr. Duncan, as she has no legal authority over his accounts or his affairs. Well, yeah, because they illegally removed me, people. And as soon as I go in front of a judge and try and walk him through it, he's going to, are you done yet? Well, no, mister. And then I'll be in mid-sentence, and then he'll cut me off to ask the lawyer something, and then they'll start their own little fucking lingo and leave me hanging, and then, right, just anything to derail. That's what they're gonna, it's gonna be a gong show, literally. It's going to be a freaking gong show, okay? CIBC complied with all legal duties. No, they did not. No, they did not. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't have used that teller 3 times in a row to kick out the bank card that was providing me information as to how Uncle John's account was being exploited. Why doesn't the bank investigate that? Because it was the bank that was exploiting Uncle John. That's why, people. And the proof is in the pudding with that $34 waiting for Uncle John's signature after all these years. That's 7 fucking years still waiting for Mr. Duncan's signature for a man that was so competent to deal with hundreds of thousands, millions, who knows how much Eleanor stole from him. But he couldn't freaking deal with the measly $34 after he wanted to be a part of getting Andre home. Okay. Okay. And if I talk with any kind of aggression in front of a judge because I'm upset like I am now, or I just raise my voice because I'm a firm, I can be firm, even if I maintain on my agitation and just be firm. Oh, the judge can't handle it. He can't handle the truth. Oh no. He's going to get the sheriffs coming after me. He sent the sheriffs after me. That's what that last judge did when I went to waiver my fees. He was trying to throw it out. I said, no, Your Honor, no. You can't do that. We've got the Criminal Code of Canada, this section. And then, no, first I started with the provincial. What was the provincial? I said, no, Your Honor, you can't throw it out because we've got this legislation, this, the Power of Attorney Act, the Public Guardian and Trustee, and da-da-da-da-da-da. He goes, oh, well, and I said, well, what about the Criminal Code of Canada? And then I started listing off those things. That's when he said, oh, and he freaking called a recess or something. And I went out, and even before I went out, the sheriff was approaching me. I went out with Tisha out in the hall, and the fucking sheriff came up and was intimidating me and all this shit because I was citing legislation in the Criminal Code of Canada to tell the judge that he couldn't throw it out, people. Because they turned it into a mini trial when I was just there to waiver my fees. And because he couldn't throw it out, that's when he said, take it to the cops. And then Shmay was dead 2 months later. With that freaking shady cop downstairs saying, sure, yeah, just give me Uncle John's information and I'll take care of it for you, as he's wheeling and dealing, selling my daughter's organ on the black market. Okay, well, I got your name, buddy boy. You're the one that gave Julian the cue so that you guys could carry your ass out with your perfusion machine hidden in your hammock. Yeah, just it's been a slow track, people. Right? Because, you know, they took out a soldier when they injured Amari, knowing what they were doing in advance. You see, that's the thing. Just like the government has technology 25 years in advance, they also know who they're going to target in advance and how they're going to target them. Okay? They do. They have all kinds of ways of manipulating people. Right? That's why it's called mind control. In terms of, you know, getting other people to murder other people through mind control. Right? Over his accounts or his affairs. CIBC complied with all legal duties, requirements, and obligations concerning the revocation of the Chorney POA and the statement of the Gilding POA and the instatement. Okay? It took them, they started it on February 20th and they didn't freaking settle it until September of, I guess, that year. That's an awful long time to ensure enduring and power of attorney in terms of cloning yourself into it, right? Right? Or no, it's not cloning. What is it? Yeah, like, you know when you're a person and something comes and kills you that looks like you and then they end up taking you or your life over? What are those, no, they're not, what are those things called? I don't think they're clones, per se. And the instatement of the Gilding POA and took all appropriate and reasonable steps in this regard. And that's why if I kick out a card or the bank kicks out a card and I go to the bank and they give me a new card and I have to sign for it, they technically are supposed to sign that same paper. If I ask for a photocopy, they don't give me a photocopy with their signatures on that transaction anymore, because they know what they did with John's card was illegal. Be aware of that, people. And then they try and tell me I can't get a photocopy, and I say, yes, I can. Get me your bank manager. And then they just print out some generic thing with no signatures on it, and that's what they give me now, because my account has been flagged with that bank because of all of this shit. As I call up every now and then and do telephone banking, and then they remind me that I've been a very valuable customer for 30 years, and how much they appreciate me, and I like, you got to be kidding me. Like, don't talk to me about that crap. Oh, well, we'd like to verify you by your voice. Don't you even attempt to try and do that, because it's fake and it's false and it's insecure. There's no value to it. Oh, really? Really? I said, yeah, really. Because that's all they do. It's all they have to do, people. Disconnect you from your family. You know, you learn to love your captors, right? If you're being locked up in a hospital, can't walk, right? Can't do anything. You're just sitting there waiting for the next pill and for them to feed you, waiting for somebody to come by and visit you, assuming that you're not sleeping. You don't think it's just a matter of time before you agree to anything just so that you might, what? Get a hamburger? Go to the bank? Put your John Henry down and then be taken back to the hospital and wait 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 and be told that you will never see the kids again because you'll never get better. Oh no, sorry, they didn't say it like that. They said you can't see the kids because you know you're not better yet. You can't see the kids because you know you're not better yet. Since when? Since when? Since the government decided to start stealing old people's money by any means necessary, including their houses. Okay? Uncle John was just the tip of the iceberg. He's showing the way. And Andre's throwing egg on their face. Well, not Andre. That account is throwing egg on their face. Andre doesn't even know. But I'm sure he's on that target list in there somewhere along the way, because they don't mind waiting for a few years, right? Before you know it, the whole family's wiped out. And people soon forget because they're replaced with an immigrant family that takes their place and will do the bidding of the government, and will do the bidding of the government, and then blame the politicians for the corruption. And took all appropriate and reasonable steps in this regard to ensure that it was complying with the intentions and instructions of Mr. Duncan. The claim is frivolous, vexatious, and abuse of process, and should be struck pursuant to Rule 5.9 on the grounds that it discloses no reasonable claim, it is unnecessary, scandalous, frivolous, and vexatious. It may prejudice, embarrass, or delay the fair trial or hearing of the proceedings, and it is otherwise an abuse of the process of the court. And that's because we don't have a justice system. They're not there to help protect the public. It's not what they're there for. They exploit the public. And they make backroom deals with their kind. Whatever that kind is. Because I don't think they're all human. I really don't. They look like they're human. And they may have some human DNA in there, but they're not 100% human, that's for sure. I don't know. This 2-hour video